Hello, unicorns! A bit of a different agenda for today, a bit of a plot twist.
Don't be mad.
When I was job hunting and starting off in sales,
Very lost.
just talking to people that I knew who were already in the industry really helped me navigate myself and just feel more prepared for the interviews and for my job when it started. I thought that I would interview my sales leader, Dev. I think he's a great leader and he's been just an incredibly successful SDR before he became a leader. Super juicy interview, if I may say so myself. Tips and tricks on how to be a successful SDR, how to kill an interview process.
You know the man is legit if he wore a pink hat.
That's all I'm saying.
Anyways,
First interview, hopefully not my last. It was super fun and I hope you guys enjoy it. So today we have a very special guest. Dev, I wanted to thank you so much for coming. He, on my behalf, on the behalf of the unicorns, he put on a nice neon t-shirt and a pink hat just to go with the flow and the unicorn movement. So thank you so much, Dev.
No problem. I'm all for it. I love neon colors, so I'm in line.
He's on board. First things first, Dev, I wanted to start off by asking you what led you to get into the sales industry. I know that people always say you don't grow up dreaming to be a salesman, so you don't.
Not many people. Maybe some, but not many. Yeah.
That is true. And yeah, I'm curious if you had an aha moment where you thought, oh my gosh, this is the path that I want to take. I just want the insight on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share, Sarah. So for me, like my background and my dream growing up was like sport, always about that. And being from New Zealand, it was rugby and cricket. So like you talk about what you want to be when you grow up. I would always talk about like, I want to be a rugby player. I want to be a cricket player. And so I did all my schooling in New Zealand. And then after that, I went to the UK to become a professional cricket player for a couple of years. So I got to live that dream. And it was like the best experience of my life. Really enjoyed it. I'm so competitive. So to be able to scratch that competitive itch like on like the sports field was like just amazing to be able to do. So I was able to tick that box, and then that came to an end, and I was at a crossroads. Like, do I go back to New Zealand or do I continue living overseas because I enjoyed it so much? And I decided to take the route of continue living overseas. So I came to Canada to start my career in business. Now, I didn't know which area I wanted to go into, and it wasn't like I had sales kind of written down in front of me where like, oh, this is my next step. For me, it truly was a journey. So I had a couple of roles before I got into tech sales or tech SDR. So I had a crack at HR and I had a crack at recruitment. I realized both weren't for me. Like I was kind of scaling myself up, went from HR to recruitment, which has like sales aspects to it, to a fully fledged tech SDR. So for me, I just kind of groomed my way, and I just like read my personality. I used that competitive edge from sport to be like, okay, like that kind of relates to sales where like I want to be the best, I want to be the winner, like I want to kind of keep upskilling myself. And through that journey and like I keep going back to that need to like fulfill that competitive edge is how I found myself into sales.
Dev, I'm not gonna lie, you're definitely testing my active listening skills too in this segment, which is great and beneficial here for me in every way. So I appreciate it. Definitely something I need to work on. So
I do harp on about it, so I'd love to see you keep improving that.
So Dev, my next question for you is there anything that coming into the role as an SDR, like you said, it wasn't planned, it kind of came out of nowhere, it just led yourself there. Is there anything that when you started off as an SDR that kind of took you by surprise and like didn't that something like anything you didn't expect the role to be? I know that like me personally, something that took me by surprise was like just how drastic those highs and lows were. I had no idea like to that I was gonna experience this emotional pull and mental drag. So yeah, I'm curious if there was anything for you that was like a surprise to you in any way.
Yeah, it's a good question, Sarah. I think maybe one of the biggest surprises was the amount of outbound effort that's necessary to be successful. And maybe that differs between each sales development organization as you move through tech companies. But for us at Allocadia, when I first come in, and still to this day, in fact, you have to be able to handle those objections over the phone, even just pick up the phone and dial. It's all about that outbound action, not relying on marketing to fulfill your pipe. Like you've got to do that work yourself and be proactive. Really tick all those boxes in terms of like prospecting, doing activity, and then doing everything you need to do to book meetings. And I think just the amount of like that would be it. The amount of outbound effort to be successful struck me probably by surprise a wee bit, but you soon get used to it. You soon understand that like that's sales. It's just the amount you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And that's the fun part as well. Like if you want to be the best, you're going to put in a couple of extra hours here and there, and you're going to see yourself at the top of the leaderboard. And that's the fun aspect I see of it as well.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. And I always say too, like sales, I love it because you eat what you kill, right? Like you're not on a regular salary because like you're your own boss, and it's a blessing and it's a curse in a lot of ways. And I don't know, I prefer that way of working because you're way more motivated to wake up every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you continue with that attitude, that's really how you skyrocket quickly up the sales ranks. And as maybe we'll get into, there's multiple ways you can go from an SDR in terms of an organization. There's so many roles and career paths, and if you work your butt off, excuse my language, for a good year and a half, then you're setting yourself up for success, truly.
Yeah, wow, super fascinating, Dev. I love that. Okay, yeah. So I'm curious, in your humble opinion, what is maybe a skill that maybe it was more of a blind spot for you, something you lacked going into sales that you now feel like you took some time and put a lot of work towards and now are more comfortable with, and like definitely think that you've like excelled in something that you lacked going into sales. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think I've got a good answer. And when you first come into a sales role, sales development, and it's obviously the entrance into the tech world for a salesperson, right? So you think about actually selling your product, and you're so obsessed with like, okay, this is what my product can do for you. Let me just bring these benefits across to the prospect, or let me just list out these great things that we can do, or have all those things ready to go in my head. But I soon learned that if you try to thrust your product down a prospect's throat without learning anything first, it's not going to go anywhere. And that for me, that was the learning curve, where it's like, okay, you must take an interest in what the prospect is going through, what their challenges are, their needs, their pains, and then attaching the value of your product to that to really make their brain explode and understand that like this is how we can help you in your day-to-day role, less day-to-day stress. We're going to make you more effective and efficient at your role. That's when the wheel starts to turn a bit more, instead of just thrusting, as I say, a product down someone's throat. So I think that was like a key learning. It did take me like a fair while to get to that point, but once you realize that, and it's just about like showing interest and learning about the prospect as the first step, as I say, that's when the cogs start to turn.
Totally. And that's definitely something that doesn't come easy. Like it's as you learn like the importance of your relationship with the prospects, it's like such a slow burn. And I remember when I also started off, I thought day one, you get on the phone and you book a meeting and that's the end, done. But it's really not. And you taught me that. So it's really interesting, like really getting to know the people you prospect into and putting the time into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you
Yeah.
can go as deep as you'd like. Like you can get stalkerish per se when you've got LinkedIn, you've got Google to get tidbits about certain people. And what I'd give as advice to aspiring SDRs out there is don't be afraid to use those, to find out more about your prospects. And it doesn't always have to be strictly about business. Like if you find out a cool element about their personal life or a project they're working on or like a club they're a part of, like bring it up. Like if someone talks to me about being from New Zealand and starts talking about the All Blacks, the national rugby team, I'm going to be so stoked to have a conversation. So yeah, that's what I think.
Totally. Something that I actually spoke about in one of my videos recently was trying to maintain a balance in the drastic highs and lows that we experience in sales, and like just keeping your emotions intact. Something that I really struggle with, to tell you the truth. Always have, but especially now in sales. And you know, I've had so many conversations with you and so many and other leaders at Allocadia. And so I'm curious, like what your advice would be to those who are experiencing similar things with their emotions, and also what you personally would do when you were an SDR to keep your emotions intact and not let those highs and lows get to you so bad.
Yeah. And this is obviously like a difficult conversation around being an SDR, where like you can't get away from it, right? Like we can't book a meeting on every call. It's just not going to happen. So just having the outlook that the next call is going to be a great one. And something I like to say is that salespeople, like we got to have amnesia. Like we've got to move on quickly. If we let those 5 connects that didn't end in a positive result, in our opinion, get to us, likelihood that the next connect's going to also be not positive. So it's just Murphy's law, and understanding that like if you just keep dialing and keep talking to prospects, a good one, a great connect, a booked meeting is coming down the line. And it's just having that understanding. Now, there's certain work you have to put in to be able to have that mindset, and that is like having coaching sessions during the week, like bringing great questions to your manager and one-on-ones to help improve your learning. Like be proactive about it. I love using that word, be proactive about it. Call coaching sessions, objection handling sessions. If you're putting that work in behind the scenes, it allows you to have that mindset of okay, like I'm gonna forget these not so positive calls, and the next one's gonna be a great one. I missed it. Okay, not to worry. The next one's going to be a great one. So that's why I say that that amnesia piece, where it's like we just keep putting those behind us and having the attitude that like I'm going to get it on the next call. So every call you're ready for it to be great, and if it doesn't happen, doesn't matter. The next one's going to be great. So that's it's obviously easier said than done, but as long as you're putting in that fundamental work into your training, like you're taking action on it instead of like waiting for your manager to give you everything. You're asking those questions. Hey, how do I overcome this objection? Hey, I haven't heard this before. Like, what does that mean? Really, really being a sponge and learning from the people close to you that you work with is fundamental in that. And I think just through a culmination of those points, it'll allow you to be successful and overcome those lows and the roller coaster ride that is the SDR world.
Right. Okay. So it would take time and practice. Like for you, was it like a mindset shift overnight that you just told yourself, like, I'm going to think this way from now on and things are going to get easier? Or did it take consistent practice over time and slowly got easier and easier?
Yeah. Like I always knew I had the fight in me. And I think that's something that you just got to have as a person. And when you're jumping into the SDR world, is like, be relentless. Be relentless. I once got an email back from a prospect that was like, can you please stop emailing me? You're relentless. And I took it as like, oh, sweet. You called me relentless. I don't care that I didn't get the meeting. Like I'm doing my job, right? I'm going out there, being outbound minded and ticking all those boxes. So I think coming into the role, even though I had no idea about the tech world, no idea about Allocadia, about the product, about sales skills, it was all quite new to me. I knew that I had that fight. And then as I learned more and more about all those things that I mentioned, now I know that there will be successful calls coming down the road. So, to SDRs, like it will take time. But if you, like I say, if you keep putting that work into yourself and your like ongoing training, you're being proactive about it, it allows you to have the mindset.
Totally. Love that. As an SDR, full transparency, Dev here may have broken a world record or just a company record. I don't know. But he definitely did. He has his name on the wall of fame at Allocadia, so kudos to you. He doubled his OTE in 1 month, which is insane. And so you know, we bow down to you. We look at you like you are like the golden man. So I'm just curious, like, as the most successful SDR in history, what are things that you believe you did right to get you that success? Obviously, again, it didn't happen overnight. There were things that you practiced religiously. And so tell us your secret sauce. Give us the tea. We want to hear what little secrets you have to being an exceptional SDR like you were.
Golden SDR. I mean, like I'll take it. I don't know if I can be held in that regard, but certainly appreciate the compliment there, Sarah. Yeah, like that's a difficult question to unpack. There's so much to it. But I think one of the key things is that, like, the more times that you connect with someone, the more likely you are to book a meeting. So it's and this is something that you'll know, Sarah. I harp on about it all the time. It's fostering those warm conversations, those warm relationships. So it's not putting someone into a sequence or a cadence, connecting with them one time. It didn't work out. Okay, no worries. I'll let them float off into the universe. It's not about that. It's about keeping track of all the people that you have connected with, whether that be positive or negative, because you know they at least pick up their phone, right? And that's half the battle, is like getting people to pick up their phone. So whichever platform you use, create a dashboard where you can view everyone that you've ever connected with. And then from there on, it's just about touch points. Not every touch point has to be asking for a meeting. So you could invite them to a webinar per se. All the people that you've connected with, invite them to an upcoming webinar. It's providing them with value, depositing goodwill. So then when it comes to the point where you do want to ask for a meeting, you can extract that goodwill that you've deposited. If you just go back straight away and ask for a meeting again in 2 weeks' time, the chances are the answers are going to be the same thing. So really, really, like, as a salesperson, to really turn the dial up is continuing to have conversations. It doesn't always have to be like with cold prospects, right? Like, connecting with a prospect for the first time is tough and it's difficult because they've got no idea what you're calling about. But once you call them the second, the third time, they start to remember you. They remember your accent if you have one. They remember your voice, why you're calling, and so you've got a little bit of context to go off. And like I say, if you've continually got a few touch points in between asking for meetings, then you'll be very, very successful. And Sarah, another point is, this might be a bit of a contentious one, but it's understanding the value of a calendar invite. So for SDRs out there, you know that, like, you might have a great conversation with a prospect over the phone, and then they tell you to send me times, or like, okay, let's meet at this time, but they don't accept the meeting. Like, those are obviously occasions as an SDR where you feel like you got so close, but you missed out, and it's hard to accept because you're like, damn it, I had it right there. So to use the calendar invite in those situations where you write a very, very personalized calendar invite out, where, like, you talk about what you chatted about on the phone, and, like, here's the value, here's why we should chat. Wanted to do my due diligence and actually getting this into your calendar. Like, using them sparingly, not throwing them out left, right, and center. But if you've had a great conversation with someone and you were so close to booking it, you know, you're well able to put time in the calendar if you explain why you're doing it. I find that's a bit of a lost art in sales development.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's a really I think that's such like a big thing that people undervalue. Like I only really started doing it in my time as an SDR, and I didn't realize like how crucial that is, because when you give that initiative, like they'll take it. They see it there, they'll take it. If you it's just about you putting in that initiative. So
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, Dev. I really appreciate that. I'm curious. Okay, so I kind of want to reverse this, because for me, so like I remember when I was looking for jobs, the biggest thing, a friend of mine actually gave me advice because I was super lost. I was a headless chicken, just out of school, didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, but I got advice from my friend, and he said, doesn't matter what the company is at the end of the day, doesn't matter what they do if you're passionate about it, but he said the biggest thing you should look for is your leader, because they're the people who are going to shape you, mentor you, really just chisel that personality and like who you become in your future role, because it's just so crucial starting out in your new career. And you know, you have so much like coaching with them that they really like shape who you are. And I didn't really like, I was like, you don't know anything, like what are you talking about? But I listened to him because I was a headless chicken and I had no direction, so I took his advice. And oh my gosh, like, damn, was he, excuse my language, was he ever so right? Because I learned that with you guys here at Allocadia, how important a good leader really is. And I guess, long story short, like, sorry, long explanation to my question to you, is I'm curious what your advice would be, because that was the golden advice that I got for the headless chicken, as the headless chicken that I was at the time. What advice would you give to the headless chickens out there currently trying to figure their careers out? They don't really have that much guidance.
Yeah, well, in terms of like, if I'm hearing you right, it's like looking for the first job. Right now, we haven't got our job. We're looking to get into the industry. Yeah,
Yes,
that's all. Okay,
totally.
yeah, okay.
It's just so hard to navigate, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say a couple of things here. And if you're going to get into the tech world, you kind of want to understand the journey of a tech company, and like the reason why they exist, and like the strategy behind founding a tech company. So obviously, you begin as a startup. You pitch to angel investors to try to get your first round of funding. If they think your tool's valuable, they give you that cash, and you can spend it on like, hey, let me get a salesperson, get an HR person, get a finance person, maybe get a couple of tools or whatnot, and like you spend it on what you need to do the first time. And as a startup, you obviously continue to grow and grow and grow until you can go back and pitch to investors for your second round of funding, and then now you've got all those millions of dollars to like now fill out those departments even more, buy a couple more tools, and then your growth goes a bit more exponential. So you've got those high growth phases like straight after like rounds of funding, all the way to the point where you either get bought out by a large player in the space, or you go public, your IPO. So it's understanding the journey of a tech company, why they're founded, and the exit strategy. I think that's key before you get into the industry itself. It's kind of, it's not a mundane industry. It's very up and down. Every day is different. And once you have the fundamental understanding of what the overall strategic goal is of a tech company, it'll kind of help you in your day to day to like put in context what you're doing, and kind of empower you to be like, wow, like I'm going to drive growth for a company here if I join a tech SDR team. So I think that's huge. I think that's huge to have that fundamental understanding. Do some research around it first, and in terms of when you're going to like interview for roles for tech SDR roles, I would I would actually take some time to look up tools that SDRs use on a daily basis. For example, we use like Outreach to go to market. We use Sales Nav to prospect, Zoom Info for contact details. Salesforce is our central source of truth for salespeople. Like, do some research on those tools so you come in with a skill set instead of like having to learn everything on the job. You can come in and be like, I need to learn the product, sure. I need to learn some sales skills, sure. But I have a fundamental understanding of the processes in place, and you can just plug me in. I think that makes you a lot more employable. So those two things would stick out to me, Sarah.
Wow, yeah, I never thought about like the technical aspect of it and how important that is, because it's true. It does shave off a lot of years off of you when you are trying to not only learn the job but also the tech stack. And like it's like you're learning two different jobs.
Pretty much, yeah. There's a ton to learn, as you know. Like a lot of onboarding, a lot of things going one ear out the other. Then you have to learn it again while you're actually making calls. And so to equip yourself as much as you can before you get started would be a very diligent thing to do.
Totally. So I'm curious, like, now that you are in the bird's eye view and you're looking at people you're looking at people in a position that you once were in. So I feel like when you're in that position, in the bird's eye position, you're able to better examine the people's actions, like what's right and wrong. And so I'm curious, like, now being in the bird's eye view, do you have any regrets off of like the way you went about as being an SDR at the time? Or not even regrets, but do you now look at other SDRs that you're currently coaching and leading and think, oh, I wish I did that better at the time, now that I can look back and see how they're doing it? Or what advice would you give to your SDR self 2 years ago?
Yeah, look, I would try to be a bit more creative with my outreach in my first 4 or 5 months. I understood that activity led to results, and it just does. Like, I understand some people are trying to get away from the whole numbers game and the amount of cold calls, but like the fact of the matter is that the more activity you put in, the more results you're going to get. It's just as simple as that. So I was putting in like a bunch of calls, like emails, and then I would kind of prospect, and then like that would be my day over. And it was all, I'm not going to say it was empty activities, empty tasks, but it was, you know what I mean? It was closer to that side of the table where I'm just doing tasks and I'm just expecting results. It kind of goes back to one of my previous points where it's like, if you want to book meetings, you got to get creative with it. And it's not always going to be over the first cold call. So I think if I was to go back in time and tell myself, I'd be like, hey man, like you've got to find other ways to book meetings, whether that be through calendar invites, or like if somebody's not responding via call or email, like, and they're a great prospect, don't just let them go. Like, there's LinkedIn as a touch point. You can get pretty sneaky and send a text message. Like, I'm just going to whisper that one because like don't overuse that at all. And LinkedIn video, which I know you're real great at using. So there's ways to get creative, and it's once again, I'm going to go back to a previous point, having those warm conversations just ready to go, and like filling your pipe, like backfilling your pipe every month, and the ability to be chasing down people while starting new conversations. If you're doing both in a month, that's the recipe for success. So I think it would be just that, like, stay away from the like just dial and end your day mentality, to actually think and craft personal messages to people to book meetings as well. Having that craftiness, really.
Totally. Yeah, it really is a creative job. You don't really think it would be, but it definitely is. And everyone, like when I started doing LinkedIn video outreaches, people would always ask, like, is that really effective though? Like, do you even get much response rates, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, like 1 out of 50 people will respond, but that's enough. Like, anything, you say it yourself all the time, like anything that moves the needle 1% is worth doing.
Absolutely. And to move the needle 2%, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. So it's like I say, it's about getting creative, um, and just taking to think about what would catch your attention. Like if someone was to mention this about you, like, wow, that would make me really excited, and incorporating that into your messaging as well, and not just blitzing messaging about your product out. Like we're in sales development, we're sales detectives is something I like to say. We're not just an extension of marketing and just to keep thrusting the product out. Like we've got to get personal and creative on this team in the SDR world.
I agree, definitely. We are men and women of many, many skills.
Exactly. Most definitely. We'll claim it at least.
Yeah, self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Dev. Okay, so I remember asking Ryan, who was hiring me at the time at Allocadia, how do you know? Because I was always so terrified of crossing a line with prospects. And I asked him and I said, I'm so scared to cross that line. How do you know, like, when to put that line down? And he told me, he said, you'll know when you've crossed it. It's interesting because I think lines are different for everyone. For me personally, like, you know, we laugh about it all the time. I'm a psycho dialer.
Gives me anxiety just hearing that, Sarah. Yeah. Not too psycho, I hope. Yeah.
I have no shame in calling 4 or 5 times. But I'm curious, Dev, what are, and so that just goes to show that like my line is like different than other people's line. So I'm curious, like for you, what are big no-nos in sales? Like where do you draw the line personally?
I would say like a line for me is, I don't know, like when I get on a call as an SDR on a cold call, I actually only want to ask for a meeting like 2 times max. Let's say that. And if I miss out on the meeting the first time, I'll double back and ask for their current challenges and priorities, and then try and reattach the value to those challenges. And the second time I ask for a meeting, I'd pitch it as like an educational, no obligations call, just to kind of soften the blow a wee bit. But I think anything beyond 2 times, it's like what are we doing here? Like we're just pushing. We're just pushing when there's no need to be pushed, or there's no avenue to go down. So, yeah, like for me, if you don't get the meeting on those first 2 attempts, it's like double back, get out of there, let that person breathe, and then come back with a new tactic. So I think that this mentality of like I have to book a meeting on every call, that's almost like a mistake, and it's going too far. It's going too far.
Dev, you know, now that you've taken on a more senior role, kudos to you. Very, very happy to hear that, of course.
Thank you.
You've been a part of the hiring process more so. I know that you kind of already were, but more so than ever before. And so, you know, you're obviously in there with a mindset and an idea generally of what kind of person you're looking for. So I'm curious, like, what skill sets, other than, I know you mentioned earlier that having a background knowledge of the technical sides of sales, like the tech stack and all of that, is definitely very helpful. But what characteristic skill sets do you look for out of upcoming SDRs and SDR applicants throughout the interview process?
Absolutely, yeah. Can't have an ego. Cannot have an ego. You won't succeed, because you know at times we get beaten down in this role, and if we think we're, I don't know, like a higher power, and we're just going to blame others for our mistakes, it's not the way to go. The ability to take ownership, and really, like, I always use this term, but it's like just being a sponge and absorbing everything that you learn, right? So people who are open to doing that, I don't care if you have 0 background in sales. Like if you are willing to learn, that's almost enough to crack this world, because you are going to learn a ton. But if you're not open to it, if you think you've already got a handle on it and you're going to block the advice coming your way, like you're never going to get better. And that's pretty, like, it's a generic statement, but like it's just so crucial in this specific industry and type of role. So like that's one thing. That is one thing. And I'm going to go back to a previous point once again. It's relentlessness. So I think the ability to just keep going, keep gunning through, because we have weekly like targets to hit, whether that be like output wise or activity wise. You've got your weekly numbers that you have to hit, and so the ability to just keep going through thick and thin, through the highs and lows. That's another characteristic I look for. So those two are certainly key. And then I think also it's having the ability to work within a team. Because although sales is like, yeah, it's individualistic at times because you want to hit your own targets, it's how do you operate within a team and how do you help others get there? Because I truly believe in like the law of attraction, like the circle of life and things of that nature. So if you're going to give back your learnings, you're going to gain more. It's just kind of karma in a sense. So I believe the ability to work within a team, just being absolutely relentless, going for it. Even if you are not the most confident on the phone, you're just going for it. You're only going to get better through practice, and then always learning. I'd say those three would be the top three I look for.
Cool, definitely. And on that note, like, what do you, just jumping off of that point, what do you personally look for out of leaders, those who are slightly above you? Because I'll just jump in any chance I have to talk about myself. I personally, what I look for, my biggest thing out of a leader, and this is why I think you are an outstanding leader,
Gotta butter me up a little bit, yeah. Butter me up. Yeah.
Gotta fluff him up before he responds.
Yeah.
Is I think empathy. I think being empathetic is just such a really important skill. Just being able to understand. I mean, being able to like hear someone out and like, just be that pillow for them and comfort them, even though you don't necessarily understand what they're going through. And you're very good at that. Just making people feel heard. I think that's super important for me, for a leader. And also just not being an idiot, but that's obvious.
I hope I have that box ticked as well.
Yeah, you ticked that one.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, Dev, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I agree with what you're saying, and I think it comes down to the point of your leader. I like them to have the ability to talk to the people that report to them just on a human level, just on a human level, and like looking beyond the corporate structure of an organization. Like, I'm your manager, I'm going to tell you what to do mentality. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that. It's a little bit old school in my opinion, and something that I really don't try to enforce, unless, of course, there's times where you have to mandate things. Of course, like we still work for a company, right? But for the most part, I'm just about like creating a friendship, and also being there for my SDRs, whether that be any walk of life, whether that be in the role, like other side projects or personal matters. Like, I'm there for it, and like actually caring about that person, like truly, like the ability just to have, like I say, human to human conversation about anything, in these one-on-ones that you have. Like, I just think that's so crucial. Our former leader Ryan had a ton of it, and that was great for me to learn from that. But I honestly just think that's the key. That's what I look for when I'm looking for a leader in any walk of life. It's like, can they speak to you on a human level? Do we click like that, instead of just that kind of corporate mandate that we used to see back a few years ago, where it was like, yeah, I'm going to tell you what to do type mentality.
Right. So again, back to the fact that, you're taking on a lot of applicants right now in your more tenure role. What are like good signs of questions that applicants ask you that kind of show you like, oh, this they are a good applicant. Like I know we talked about skill sets and characteristics. Like what are the right questions to ask as someone coming into an interview process? Because I do believe like asking the right questions is always really important too.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think it's like if someone truly wants to understand like the culture of the SDR team, like is it competitive? Like do people really want to win, or is it laid back? Like what is the like internal competition within the team? I think that's a great question. I think it's a really good question because you're showing the intent that like I want to come in and be the best, like respectfully. Like, you know what I mean? It's a respectful way to ask, like how do I be the best? How do I outshine my colleagues but also like I want to be a team player as well. So I think learning about the culture, and I start to blend into the background here as the sun goes down with my yellow t-shirt on. But like it's asking a question around that internal competition piece. I think is huge. That's really the one that sticks out to me, and also maybe asking about the overall direction of the company, where they are in their tech journey. What are the plans over the next few years? Are we looking to get bought out in 2 years' time? Like, what's the year-over-year growth targets? Like, what's our end goal? Like, showing those that high level interest of the company, as well as like I want to do well in my role. So I think having those two sides to it is really something influential, and that will tip your tip the scales in your favor.
Totally. I love that. Dev, thank you so much again for joining me and supporting the Unicorn Gang. I know that you are one of us. You're a fellow unicorn. So that's why, again, our thoughts were very aligned in the way. I think that we're super aligned in a lot of like the way we go about our sales tactics and just like as people. Unicorns, I do apologize. We were filming at sunset, so my special guest faded into the darkness. The darkness took him away towards the end of our video. Don't stress though, unicorns, he is okay. I just spoke with him yesterday and he's fully recovered and back in the light. Moving forward, I will be more conscious of not having an interview at the crack of sunlight. I know that was super inconvenient and irresponsible of me, but now I know, you live and you learn, right? Okay, thank you again for watching. Thank you for the support, unicorns. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let me know if you like the interviews or if you like to get back to the regular schedule. I would not take offense to that because